Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, this week I did not introduce a completely disastrous and utterly unnecessary rollout of a rebranding of a popular soccer team located in Central Ohio. So as a result of not being the idiot who did that, I'm great. I suspect you're much the same, but Tony, how are you?
Doing pretty good. I am not great at Photoshop, which is, or graphic design.
So,
So I'm
so you
surprised.
so you are the person who did it? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm saying I'm surprised I didn't get a call
Okay.
because if anything, if you want something mediocre and quick, boom, I'm your guy. And I could have done something soccer related that wouldn't have to put much thought into it, wouldn't have to put much care or effort or love into it. And I could have, could I have done that? I hope not. But I could have done something.
My biggest complaint is number one, eliminating the crew name. Number two, complete lack of orange slices on the logo. Like, is this a soccer team or is it not a soccer team? High C and orange slices, or get out. That's what I say.
Like the back of, I think, the Ohio State helmet or the collar, they've got like the 7 Buckeye leaves for the national championships or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Should be like 7 orange slices on the back of the kit, if you will, or the jersey. I don't, again, I'm your guy. If you want to design something soccer that you obviously don't care about, that's me. I can do that. But yeah, that was one disaster. The other disaster, Tom, was when I was on the Morning Scoop with you earlier this week, and we went over the top 10 most overrated programs in the nation, and you, with about, I don't know, 30 seconds of preparation, told me, hey, I'm going to quiz you on these, and if you get them wrong, you're going to look like an idiot, and you will be an idiot, and everyone will know that you're an idiot. And so I I'd recommend go back and I don't know if I should recommend going back and watching it or listening it.
I'll recommend going back and watching it. Like, if you go to the YouTube comments, it's like the most positive YouTube comments we've ever had on one of our episodes. People absolutely love that episode for some reason. So yes, go back and watch it. It was the Monday Morning Scoops that went up Sunday night. It is the 5 most overrated college football programs in the nation.
And so in honor of that, Tom, of being throwing this quiz without any preparation, I've got one for you. And it has nothing to do with old-time Buckeyes or new-time Buckeyes with old-time names. It's something I haven't brought up to you. I am going to quiz you, Tom, and let's see how many of these you can get. I'm going to name the starting quarterbacks from a Maryland versus Rutgers game from their time in the Big Ten, and you have to give me the year.
Please be Gary Nova. Please be Gary Nova.
There's been, 7 matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you the starting quarterbacks. How many do you think you can get correct of those 7 the exact year? If I set the over under at 2.5, 3.5.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm gonna be like plus or minus a year on a lot of them. I'm gonna write down the years, because what'll happen is I'll end up guessing 2014 like 4 times.
But 2014.
Do I?
You will when I tell you.
Okay.
But
all right.
But I'm not going to give them to you in order.
Well, yeah. So yes, 2014 to 2020. Okay, there we go.
All right. So I'll give you, first one is a kind of a free one. It's not the guys who started. I'll let you know who the guys who started. This is the 2 guys who finished and put up the most stats. It was Archer Sitkowski versus Eric Nigerian. Now, have you ever heard of Eric Nigerian before? I just mentioned him to you right now.
I have literally never heard that name before in my life. That sounds like that sounds like a creative player. So I'm really going based on Arthur Sitkowski.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, those weren't the starters. I can give you the starters now. I just wanted to throw those 2 in there because I knew we had never heard those guys before.
Mm-hmm.
Noah Vedral versus Lance Legendre.
Okay, so this is either 2018 or 2019. And I'm going to say, I think 2019 was the year they went through Sitkowski and then Vedral and then Johnny Langan at Rutgers. So I'm going to say this is 2018.
You're incorrect.
Was it 2019?
Yeah, I don't know if I should give you the answer because then you can just start narrowing it down. So I'm not going to give you the answer. But you are incorrect. Next one. And we'll have to make this kind of quick because I don't know, we need a 30-minute show on this. Let's go with Giovanni Rossigno versus Max Bortenschlager.
All right. So Bortenschlager was the year that Maryland had all of their quarterbacks die like real early in the year. It was the first year they beat Texas. So I know which year this is. The question is just, do I know what the number of this year? I know which season this was. The question is, do I know what year this season happened in? I'm going to say that was 2017.
That is correct.
Yes.
Good job, Tom.
Nobody out Bortenschlager's me. Now you have a title for the podcast. This episode, nobody out Bortenschlager's Tom. Okay, go on. Keep going.
Do we really just want to start throwing stuff out there for SEO and Google? we're not that much of a sellout. Here's one for you. Gary Nova versus CJ Brown.
Again, I have no recollection of CJ Brown. It turns out Maryland's quarterbacks have been largely forgettable since about Scott Milanovich. So let's see. Gary Nova was like in those early seasons. So like 2014 and 15, like I think he was the quarterback who beat Michigan in 2014. So I will say 2014.
That is correct, Tom. Good job. Looking pretty good here.
I'm feeling so much shame knowing this much Maryland and Rutgers football. This is a lot of shame I'm feeling right now.
Here's another easy one for you. I'm sure. Chris Laviano versus Perry Hills.
Chris Laviano was one of the like really terrible. I think he might have been like the first Chris Ash year. So I'm going to say 2000 and have I already guessed 2017?
Yes, you got that one correct.
Okay. Then I'm going to say he is 2016.
I'm sorry, Tom, that is incorrect. But you were close in that it was one of those 7 years. So that was a tough one. Next one, Tom. Artur Sitkowski versus Kasim Hill.
Right. Well, I earlier guessed 2018 and was incorrect. And I know Artur Sitkowski there were only, I think, 2 Artur Sitkowski years. So I'm going to say this must be 2018.
That is correct. Good job, Tom.
I've hit the over.
Yes. Well, I said it also at 3.5, maybe. We'll see. All right. Next one. Giovanni Rossigno versus Perry Hills.
Now I have to remember what year Perry Hills was earlier.
It's like the memory. I turned over the pineapple. Where was the clock?
I'm going to go with 2000 and did I guess 2016 and get it correct earlier?
You, if you did guess 2016, you would have guessed incorrectly before.
Okay, well then I'm going to take 2016 now.
Good job, Tom. That is correct. You're doing very, very well. Let's see. What do we got here left? We got this and this. Okay. You're doing really, really, really well. I think we've got just one remaining.
It's going to be really embarrassing when I miss 2020, which I think is the remaining one.
So let's go with this one. Johnny Langan versus
2020.
Josh Jackson.
2020.
Sorry, Tom. That is incorrect.
Was that 2019?
Yes. Oh! The first one was 2020. Artur
Sitkowski
versus Eric Nigerian.
I didn't remember Artur Sitkowski playing last year, and I know he just went in the portal. So
yeah, no, he didn't play much. So good job, Tom. That was 4 out of 7. Oh, you hit the over. That's very embarrassing.
And I think like plus or minus a year on most of them. So on the ones I missed. So I'm feeling pretty bad about that, but that's okay. It was a good performance. I feel terrible about it.
Yeah, I did better on what I did because I was like 4 of 6, and then I eventually was, I would say 5 of 7. You
were 5 of 6 in terms of guessing the top 5 because you did guess one team twice. So,
and here you were just 4 of 7.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfortunate for you. Fortunate for me. But Tom, let's start the show because it's almost over. Ohio State loses out on Tennessee transfer linebacker Henry To'o, which was devastating news because Ohio State doesn't have any linebackers, even though Buckeye fans have been clamoring for the guys on the roster to play in front of guys like Tuff Borland and yes, even Pete Werner for a time. And so you had a bunch of people that wanted these guys to play. And now this is the year they can play. And then you see, oh, but there's somebody shinier over here. And then when you don't get him, of course, you're upset about it. And it's interesting to see what Alabama has done this year in the transfer portal. And it's just like they're going and just putting some finishing touches on some things where, like, when Ohio State has done it, it's been a finishing touch, but it's also been kind of out of desperation with Justin Fields and Jonah Jackson and even Trey Sermon. Like, they needed these guys. I don't know that Alabama needs a Henry To'oTo'o or a Jamison Williams, but it's like, you know what? It wouldn't, it's like getting T-tops on your Trans Am. Do you need them? No. Do you like them? Yes. And so that's kind of where I think they are with these additions. And so it's been, it's been a tough week for Ohio State, but where do we move on from now, Tom? Where do we go from here?
Well, To'oTo'o, I think, would have been an upgrade from what Ohio State has right now, but that's not really the spot where they would really, you would really look at it and go, this would be a massive hole for Ohio State to fill. I think they probably have that at corner, where if you could upgrade, you bring in a first team all conference corner, that would be a bigger upgrade than what you're looking at linebacker, because linebacker is unproven on the field, but I get the sense that they have a pretty good sense that they know what they have there with these guys, because this is the fourth year for guys like Dallas Gant and Taraja Mitchell, and you've got younger guys. I mean, they talked up Tommy Eichenberg, and To'oTo'o would have been an inside guy, so it would have been one of those kind of Mike or Will spots, not the Sam spot. That's kind of a different animal. But this would have been I think this might have been a nice to have for Ohio State, not necessarily like a must have. This was not, Dwayne Haskins left a year earlier than we thought he would, and now we don't really have a quarterback we have a lot of confidence in. So you have to get a Justin Fields. I think this is much more like, well, you could take what might be a B+ to an A- or something like that, which again, it makes you better. That's good. But I think if Ryan Day could wave a magic wand and have the perfect fit, All-American, good, high character, good cultural fit kind of player just appear in the portal, I think he would wave his wand and point it at the cornerback section of the portal 100 times out of 100 right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he played middle linebacker at Tennessee. I don't know if there's enough time to enroll at Ohio State in June or whenever and learn the defense in a way that allows you to be the team's middle linebacker. And now that doesn't mean he couldn't have played to will, but you've got Taraja Mitchell there who has been waiting patiently for at least the last 2 years behind Pete Werner and Malik Harrison and other guys. And so there was just, he's talked about how it's been not frustrating, but it's not been easy to just sit and wait. And I'm sure the same thing can be said for Dallas Gant and Kayvon Pope, all of these guys now becoming seniors this year. And then to see Ohio State go out and I don't know if publicly is the right word, but it surely wasn't a secret that they're trying to add a starting linebacker. And especially if now you are condensing things into 2 starting linebackers and a bullet, and it was already going to be tough for everybody of these, say 6 linebackers on the roster right now, scholarship linebackers, to find a spot as one of 2 starters. And then to find out that maybe it's only going to be these 6 guys into 1 starter, because they're going to try to bring in another starter in Henry To'oTo'o. So I don't want to say it's the typical, they dodged a bullet. I do think there could have been some chemistry issues or some tension based on bringing one guy in to take up half of your starting linebacker spots when you've had so many people doing so much more work at Ohio State than Henry To'oTo'o ever did at Ohio State, because he's never done any of it. And so to just bring him in day one, you basically trying to bring in a starter. I think it creates some tension that a strong culture can handle, but it doesn't mean it would have gone over smoothly, in my opinion.
That's true. You do have, questions about how it's going to go over in the locker room. And when they brought in Jonah Jackson, I think we had a lot of the same questions. And then he was the first guy to lose his black stripe and was immediately accepted and was immediately a contributor. And, if you bring in a Henry To'oTo'o and then one of the other guys leaves and Henry To'oTo'o is a better player than the guy who left, that's still a net positive for your team. Like that's, and this is, they talk about the brotherhood, they talk about the culture, they talk about next man up and all that kind of stuff. But it's the next man up is not just the guy who has the most service time on the roster. It's who's the guy who's the best. Whoever the guy on the roster is who's the best is the guy who's going to be the next man up. Just because you've been there, just because you have seniority doesn't mean that you're you're the best. You're the best player. Like there are older guys in that wide receiver room right now who are not the best players in that unit. And you have a lot of freshmen and sophomores in there in that starting lineup or juniors in that top six ahead of guys who've been on the roster longer. This is, college football, for all of the period of amateurism, college football is a business. College football is a big business. Coaches are paid a lot of money and they're paid a lot of money to win. So in order to win, you play the best players. Like this is one of these things that, like, I'm sure it seems deeply unfair if you're one of the guys who's been on the roster for years and waiting your turn and you think it's now finally your turn and then you get recruited over. But it's like, well, I had Kirk Barton on the Morning Scoop on Tuesday morning and asked him about this specifically. And he just basically said, like, yeah, if you don't like it, play better, be a better football player and you won't get recruited over. Like it is inarguable. Ohio State brought in Justin Fields, Tate Martell left, Matthew Baldwin left. And I don't think there's a question that, that room was real thin for a little while, but I think it's pretty inarguable that having Justin Fields there gave them better results than Tate Martell and or Matthew Baldwin would have, just, keeping, holding the status quo, don't rock the boat. Tate Martell went to Miami and I think might have thrown one pass, maybe, might not have thrown a pass at all. Matthew Baldwin went to TCU, had knee issues and had to medically retire. If you didn't bring in Justin Fields, there is no Fiesta Bowl 2 years ago. There is no Sugar Bowl this year. Like that's not happening. Like those quarterbacks just were not at the level that would have gotten Ohio State to where Justin Fields got them. So, ultimately, even if there is a little bit of rocking of the boat during the offseason, ultimately, if you bring in a better player, you just have to be a little bit selective. And they are being selective. We have heard that there were a couple of names in the portal at corner where they didn't feel like it would be a good cultural fit. They're being a little bit selective here. They're making sure they're bringing in, high character guys. And I think at this point, they've earned the benefit of the doubt. You go back and it's like Trey Sermon, Jonah Jackson, Justin Fields, like those are, outside of NFL draft people, I don't know that I've heard anyone say anything bad about any of those three guys, just in terms of personality, in terms of work ethic, all of that kind of stuff. They came in, they all contributed. They were all like at least all conference level players. One of them is the all-time leading single game rusher now. Another one, just got picked in the top 10 of the draft. These are guys who were like serious contributors. They've done a good job being selective and really, really making sure they're getting good cultural fits. So I think, at this point, if they're going hard after a guy, they've probably kind of earned the benefit of the doubt on that.
I think the Justin Fields thing is a little bit different because I'm going to assume the team saw their quarterbacks and then found out that, Justin Fields is better than what they have. And so it's almost, you talk about rocking the boat. I could see the team just basically say they are in a boat. The boat is adrift at sea. Justin Fields, meanwhile, pulls up in this nice yacht and is like, hey, hop on, let's get out of here. And so you think, well, he's going to rock the boat. No, you're jumping into his boat because his boat is much more stable. I think the team realized that their fortunes were better with him. So it's much easier to accept him in that regard.
Let's make a topical reference here. The boat is wedged in the Suez Canal. Justin Fields has an excavator. So by rocking the boat, because the boat is stuck, rocking the boat is actually a good thing.
Just got to get it back in the water, and then it just floats on by. I do also think I appreciate Kirk's thoughts on it, but he's also a little more old school. And from, he was 2003 recruiting class. So times have changed, as we know, as they've changed with Ryan Day, and the way players are dealt with is much different than it was under Woody, Earl Bruce, then John Cooper, then Jim Tressel, and even from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day, there has been a step forward. So I don't think we can just dismiss this idea that don't worry, players will just deal with it, and this is big boy football. All of that is true, but I guess I'll go back to the fact that I don't think Ryan Day would bring in somebody that would hinder the culture, but that doesn't mean there still would be some ruffled feathers, as we see, like even something which could be as meaningless as Ohio State cornerback Cam Brown tweeting out something about watch your next move or something like that, where the transfer portal, even, and I tell people all the time, don't read anything into what college players tweet or what high school athletes tweet, because it could be anything. And of course, we only see them through the scope of football. And so you apply it to whatever that is. But the idea that players are just going to be okay with this, it creates another level of just it's roster management, it's feelings management. It's so much more time than just I just wanted to be a head coach.
There is a lot more that goes into it. And I mean, we've talked about the NIL stuff that's coming, and you got the one-time transfer portal stuff that's coming, and it's all of a sudden like there is, this is not purely an on-field decision, but in a lot of ways, I think it kind of is mostly an on-field decision. Like, unless you think you're going to lose 4 of those 6 linebackers by bringing in Henry To'oTo'o, like bring in your guy for this year, give yourself a better chance this year. You do not have an infinite number of seasons in which you have a legitimate chance at a national championship. I mean, at some point, other teams in the Big Ten are going to probably get better, and the league is going to be a little harder to win. And it's not just going to be, Ohio State fans booking their trip to Indianapolis in March and just, okay, well, we know we're going to be there, so we might as well get the hotel early. So, the path is relatively clear this year. There are still questions. You've got a young quarterback, whoever that quarterback is. You've got some holes in the defensive backfield. Cam Brown, who you just mentioned, like the Achilles injury is not a great one for a cornerback. Like that is a very tough one to come back from. I think we saw Tuff Borland 2 years ago have that injury, and it really, like, it took him a while to kind of come back from that. Master Teague didn't look quite right for a bunch of the season last year. Cornerbacks are even more like quick twitch, quick shift, flip your hips, all that stuff. That is a tough injury to come back from. And the depth behind Sevyn Banks and Cam Brown is not where they would want it to be right now. And a lot of the first year guys who you might have looked at as, hey, this might be a guy who can come in and make an immediate impact, those guys weren't there in the spring, so they probably can't make an immediate impact, at least at the start of the season. So there is just a lot kind of adding up to, like, another body or 2 in that room would not be a bad thing. And, if that pushes Cam Brown from the second outside corner to the slot corner, or, there's just a 3 cornerback rotation for those 3 outside spots, and Cam Brown is well enough to play at the level they need to get to where they want to get as a team, like, great. But if he's not, like, you have to be concerned about people's feelings. You also have to be concerned about stuff other than people's feelings. Like, that can't be your only thing that you're concerned about. Otherwise, you're the really wonderful, popular head coach who then gets fired in 2 years because his team isn't quite good enough.
I got to tell you, Tom, I'm surprised by your heartless nature, although I guess I shouldn't be, because you are a win at all costs youth sports coach.
That's true. And you, of course, are the Mike Riley of this podcast. Beloved, soft, hey, guys, come on, guys. Mm-hmm. It's going to be okay. And then you get fired. So, that's fine. Like, whatever you want to be. I'm the Bo Pelini. You're the Mike Riley. That's fine. We're both very comfortable with what we are.
But I then get paid to, like, millions of dollars to not work for literally years at a time.
Hey, so, did you see me get paid $2.5 million to completely eviscerate LSU's defense last year? I'm doing just fine too, pal.
Fair point. I do, again, Tom, I do think you're being a little heartless. Imagine, like, back when you were 20 in college and, you're doing your roto baseball on a computer with your punch cards, and somebody takes your rusty stomp card.
When do you think I went to college?
But college kids are different, and we were different in college as well. So, but I also think the longer you're in college, like, I don't know, Ohio State the quicker you grow up and you realize that you start to see the way the sausage is made, and it's not, it's that the whole de-recruitment process. It's not just a one-time thing when you're in there in the winter or the first summer that you're there. It continues. So I want to go back to a discussion we had last week on Morning Scoop about, you asked me who is the transfer portal better for, whether it's the players or the smaller schools or the bigger schools. And I didn't really give you an answer because I didn't really have enough time, frankly, to think about it. Because again, you give me 3 minutes of show prep before you just throw these things on me. And plus, I need like an entire day to really just think about what I want to say and prepare like I do for this show. And I truly believe that now that I've thought about it, the transfer portal is better for the Alabamas and the Ohio States than the Colorado States or the UCF and stuff like that. Because again, like I said at the start of the show, Ohio State, Alabama can go get the finishing touches or the difference makers that puts them over the top. But who is a difference maker that has gone from Alabama to Rice, or who is a difference maker that has gone from the Power Five to the Group of Five? Really, I mean, there's probably some quarterbacks at like Tulsa or Texas from that state that have done some things for that program, but really the biggest beneficiaries are the Power Five, the top 5-10 programs in the nation. Oklahoma, I mean, maybe no bigger beneficiary than they are from the transfer. So yeah, Tom, I would like to change my answer. So if we could go back and just go ahead and put my new answer on that show, that it's definitely the top of the line programs, just as it is for all things. No matter what you do, the biggest powerful, the powerhouses are going to benefit from it, because when they lose somebody, it's somebody that they weren't really using anyway.
And that's true. I think there's an argument to be made that most levels of the sport have benefited from it, outside of programs with like real severe cultural rot. Like you see the ones that have 10, 15 guys in the portal during an off season. Tennessee has probably not benefited from the transfer portal. Like the guys they've lost have been some of the best players to go through the transfer portal. The guys they've gained have not. Michigan has had a lot of guys leave who, was Joe Milton or was Dylan McCaffrey, were they huge losses? Well, no, not necessarily, but they also were among the best options that Michigan had at those spots. So, maybe they haven't necessarily benefited from it. Basically everything. I mean, you kind of hit on it there. Basically everything in the sport right now is kind of coalescing around that like 5 or 6 like really top programs: the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Georgia, and Oklahoma, for example. If you just want to take that group, like that group is kind of the answer for just about everything. Who's going to win the national championship next year? Probably one of those 5. Who are going to be the 4 playoff teams in that group? Probably at least 3 of those 5. Who's probably benefiting most from the current recruiting rules? Probably those 5. Who's probably benefiting most from the transfer portal? Probably those 5. All that said, Ohio State just lost Max Ray, who was an offensive tackle. Was that a huge blow to Ohio State's depth chart? No, he wasn't expected to start. He might have been the backup at one of the tackle spots, but he was an important piece for them. He played that Michigan State game last year, graded out a champion. He just announced this week that he's transferring to Colorado. That's where his brother signed and I think was playing, but then just had to medically retire. But they replaced a offensive tackle who they were counting on in Jake Ray with Max Ray. That's a big benefit to Colorado. That's a player that Colorado could not get out of high school because he had better options than Colorado, better in the football sense. I'm not sure in the lifestyle sense. I think there's an argument to be made that Boulder might be one of your best options in the lifestyle sense, but in the pure football sense, he had better options than Colorado. Well, now that's an easier path to the field for him. That's a win for him. That's a win for Colorado. How many guys has Colorado lost to the transfer portal that have like gone to Alabama? Probably not very many. There's a certain amount of trickle down that does happen with that portal that does benefit those teams. And there are certain teams that are, I think Texas State is the one that is basically essentially just recruiting out of the transfer portal. Like they're essentially not signing many high school players and they're just recruiting out of the portal. Kansas is like a mess right now. They have their scholarship numbers are way down. They're kind of patching over holes with the portal. Kansas is a big winner in the transfer portal. So, it is about as win-win as you can get for the most part, outside of the schools that are like really taking it in the shorts and losing some key players like the Tennessees, for example. But for the most part, the guys who are leaving, as you said, from the big programs are guys who are not necessarily going to be contributing. And so it's like opening up a spot for someone, either a new recruit or someone else to kind of fill that spot. And the lower level programs are patching holes as well with guys who they probably would have loved to get out of high school, but couldn't. So it is, I mean, as much as the NCAA does, that's like, oh, this is terrible in every possible way. The transfer portal is really, outside of a few programs where there's, probably bigger underlying issues causing the transfer portal related issues, it's pretty much benefiting everyone in some way.
No, I think that was pretty much my answer originally, was that it benefits everybody, especially the players. It is interesting that there's no limit to how many you can go get, like as there would be signing a true freshman. And I even believe signing, I don't know if there are limits to junior college guys. It's just you don't necessarily go and sign 20 of them unless you're Bill Snyder.
Or Charlie Weiss. Or see also Kansas roster hole.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is a way for, as I mentioned on the Morning Scoop last week, like Chris Holtman said that there are now teams in basketball who are just going to recruit from the transfer portal, just as you said about Texas State. And there's so many, you can't put a limit on it, because to say like, well, you're only allowed to permitted 10 players per transfer portal or whatever per year from the transfer portal. Now you're just sticking 1,000 kids with no place to go. And so that will never happen, and nor should it. And it's just, and you guys then started to touch on it, and it's a whole different show. You and Kirk started to touch on it today with the transfer portal, the name, image, and likeness. Now, when you're bringing in, like, imagine this is what's going to happen in the future. Perhaps Taraja Mitchell is in line for a sponsorship, but then here comes Henry To'oto out of the transfer portal to take his job and his sponsorship. And so, like, I wonder how much thought is already going into that stuff. Because imagine, Tom, back when we were 2021, knowing this is on the horizon, there's no way I'm just ignoring it at this point. I'm probably thinking about it a lot. Like, by August, I'm going to be rolling in. I'm going to have a new car. I'm going to this. I'm going to be that. And then you hear all of this transfer portal stuff, and you're like, but I was getting a new car, and now, but just, and it's going to create more things to talk about, and it's not going to be one of those things. And here's the thing: the players want it, so if they get it and then they complain about how it's affecting them, I don't know that you're going to hear a lot of sympathy for them, because it's like, well, this is what you've been wanting. You've got it. Now, again, just like the playing time, it's up to you to make the most of it.
Right. And you're right. It, this may be in some ways a little bit of a be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. But you still just, these decisions are going to be made on something other than feelings. Like, that's just, you have to kind of take things into account. You don't want to alienate your locker room, but at some point you also have to go like, look, if this person makes us better, like this is something we have to do. So you're going to do it. And that is just kind of the reality of the world. And, in your example, if someone loses their starting job and their opportunity to get an endorsement with whatever car dealership or, whatever it is, there are car dealerships in other cities. So you go find another spot in another city like that, with another program, and you go be a starter there. And maybe it's a little less money, but for your NIL deal. But if that's what's important to you, that's fine. The other piece of this is like, this is going to make a lot of these decisions very complicated, because you have the playing time decision, you have whatever the NIL piece ends up looking like. And I still don't think like we have a great idea what exactly that's going to look like, because I don't think that the people in power or the people in charge really know like which of these things is really going to be the one that is like the overarching guiding thing. there is an NIL law in Georgia and in Florida. There is not one in Ohio. So like, what's that going to look like in Ohio? Is there going to be a federal thing? And if so, like, what's that going to look like? And July 1st is coming pretty quick. So there's a lot of this stuff that's going to go into this. But then you also have like, whatever $10,000 you get from some local car dealership for doing a car ad or from being an Instagram influencer or whatever it is, that pales in comparison to what you're going to make at the next level. So if you are a wide receiver at Ohio State and you're like, well, you don't want to make a decision based on your $5,000 deal to go endorse, Chick-fil-A or whatever you're going to be endorsing. The big picture is, would I rather be here and potentially get turned into a first round pick and make $5 million a couple of years down the line? Or would I rather go from a $5,000 endorsement deal to a $10,000 endorsement deal, but maybe not be developed quite as well, and then make $1 million down the line as a third round pick in the NFL? This is a lot of stuff that's going to have to get juggled. And, I remember being 18 to 22 years old, and I did not always make the most rational, long horizon, view decisions. So you may have guys doing some dumb stuff and, chasing some short-term stuff. That is a possibility. But I think the only thing that we know for sure with NIL is it's going to change everything. It's going to be a good thing ultimately for players, but I don't know if we really, until we know exactly what it's going to look like, I don't know if we have a real grasp on exactly how it's going to change things.
And then even once we know what it's going to look like, there's still the years later of the unintended consequences that we figure out. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to kill the sport. So that's good. Like television didn't kill the sport. Scholarship limits and raises didn't kill the sport. Targeting has killed the sport. I will admit that. But I think things will be okay once they settle down. I think some limits would be good, just because people need limits. We're crazy a species, and we need to be held down, if you will. Just calm down, maybe, in the interest of fairness, which we know that's what the NCAA is all about, and we all love the NCAA. So, Tom, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I can plug the morning scoop for later this week. We've got Bill Green is coming up for tomorrow's show. This is all subject to change because I think I plugged Mark Givler coming up on Monday's show the last time we did it, and then Mark Givler came up on is going to come up on Thursday's show this week. And then after that, we're on track to start our season preview series with, we'll start with some of the teams that Ohio State that does not have on its schedule in the Big Ten this year, and then work through Ohio State's schedule, and then probably hit some of the national teams as well. But I have a few beat writers already lined up to talk about some of the teams that Ohio State is not scheduled to play in the Big Ten. Spoiler alert, we're going to have a little Burt Bielema talk. I am pretty excited. I want to hear all about Burt's first spring in Champaign. I am legitimately excited. That is on track to be our first one, so that'll be fun. That should be on Friday's morning scoop, so that'll be a good one.
I am very interested to see what happens there. He was great at Wisconsin, but he was part of an established program, so it'll be interesting to see what he does there. If you guys haven't been listening to Mark Givler and Bill Green's breakdown of the Scoop 100, I would recommend that. It's 10 at a time, about a 30-minute show each time. Just the nation's best prospects. If you're into recruiting, I recommend that. I saw Alex had Kai Stokes on his show today, so I would check that out as well. And there's just always something going on via YouTube. I saw Mark had Jaheim Singletary, Ohio State 5-star commit, on, I think, interview today. So that is at the youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. If you're not yet subscribed to that, just go ahead and click on I believe it's the bell, and you'll subscribe and you'll get a notification anytime a new video goes up, and you can keep up to date on stuff like that. So I think that's going to do it. Reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com for all of your Ohio State needs. And then that's about it. We will talk to you guys on Thursday about what, I'm sure we'll figure something out. It'll be easy. I was going to say, I'm sure something will happen, but I didn't want to put that out there. I didn't want to speak it into existence because who knows what it could be, but we'll talk to you guys on Thursday, and I may edit this part out just so I didn't I didn't actually put it out into the existence, but I think I already have time. So let's just go ahead and end the show and say goodbye. Talk to you guys on Thursday.